Beautiful. Which brings me to my next question, actually, that what makes astrology a divine science?
I don't know. What's the definition of a divine science? Like what?
So, like how those who especially are on the rational side of thinking or the intellectual side of thinking, and they like to question everything with evidence and, like the Western ways of thinking. But I think science most of the time is only able to validate what up until now it has developed an ability to test and measure. All right. But there's so much more which is unseen. And until the technology comes to that level, they're not going to accept that, okay, this is how it is. So science is kind of limited, in my opinion, in that particular understanding. And that's why something like astrology to me seems like a divine science. Why? Because it didn't come in our future, it came from the past. Okay. And it came from the past at an incredibly deep level of sophistication. Because from whatever little, I have a friend also who himself is like a novice astrologer. He's been studying it for the past 3-4 years. And I'm just amazed at the innumerable amount of calculations which are possible in astrology. So the permutations and combinations are unlimited. And as I said, coming from the past and it being very, very mathematical, probably one of the first applications of mathematics, combined with observational evidence, because, earlier that's what these guys used to do. There was no Netflix, so they used to look at the black screen up in the sky. So, at that time where technology did not exist, telescopes weren't there, none of that stuff were there, but these guys made this, as well as, I don't know whether it was just mere humans or the story where I believe Agastya Muni narrated the Bhrigu Shastra or something, and Ganesha wrote it down. I believe I might be wrong
I'm not
over
sure
here.
either.
Yeah. So that was because of the kind of roots from where it comes. For me, it's something which is divine. Because it is not from today. Because I also believe that a lot of the things which are coming from today are quite corrupted. Like the pharma industry is making new medicines, but it's just making people more sick via those medicines, and 30 years later they need more medicine. So for me, it's a divine science because it is because of all the things which I mentioned. So how do you think about it?
Yeah, I think I could say a couple of things. One thing is about science, and one thing is maybe about the divinity of it. I think I would encourage you to rethink the idea that actually the Western people invented science.
Yeah, of course not.
Yeah, it's not a Western way of thinking.
Yeah.
Actually, Western people are quite illogical. And all this Christianity, Judaism, Islam, it's not based on science. It's based on
Us versus
like
them.
army kind of stuff, really.
Us versus them.
I'm your leader, you follow me, that's it.
Yeah.
The Nayakas of India invented science. The Vaisheshikas of India invented science.
I want to write this down. Vaisheshikas
and Nayakas. N-Y-A.
Okay.
Nyayaka.
Okay.
It was shortly after Buddhism. Actually, it was after Buddhism that the Nyayakas and Vaisheshikas became very prominent. And this is why we don't see a lot of Buddhists in India anymore. Because they ripped that thing apart. They ripped the Buddhist concept apart with the logic and science, that the idea that one can come from zero. The Shunyavad of Buddhism, they just tore it to pieces. And so the Buddhists left and they went into Tibet to get away from the Nyayakas and the Vaisheshikas.
Okay, our guys messed it up. Okay. Like these Vaisheshikas and Nayakas messed up the Buddhist
messed up, like philosophy. You could say we ripped it up.
Okay.
Because Buddhism said, let's not talk about the Vedas. Because the whole Buddha himself was like, you guys are doing himsa, you guys are doing violence. And you're sitting around, it's like the Pandits. They're like they're pretending like they're pundits, but they just want their money. So it's in the same way these people are doing Vedic stuff, but actually they're just selfish bastards. And they're just doing the Vedic sacrifices and stuff to gratify themselves. So Buddha was like, no, this is just wrong. and stop justifying it based on this and that quote from the Veda. It's just wrong. Just the only thing that you should care about is whether or not you're violent or not violent. Just be nonviolent. It's just to have ahimsa. And that was his message, and it was very important for India at 5,000 years ago, or I think it was 5,000 or 3,000 years ago. It was super important for India at that time. But the problem was that he got rid of that he told people just forget about the Vedas, stop referring to the Vedas. So then there had to be people after him to say, okay, now that you've gotten rid of the Vedas and you got rid of your problem of exploiting the Vedas, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back, but not use it in an exploitive way. Anyway, about science, definitely like the Upanishads, the Vedas themselves, even before the Nyayikas and the Vaisheshikas, it's all based on questions and answers, questions, investigation. What is meditation? Meditation is nothing but an experiment. Meditation is observation, but instead of, I'm not just going to observe the intestines of a frog, I'm going to observe the operations of my mind, my intellect, my emotions, my feelings, my motivations. Meditation is science. It is observation. And then whether a science is divine or not, it depends again on how we want to define divine. Intellect is divine. So therefore, any ability to think is divine. But like you said, whether or not it comes from just regular people, like an iPhone came from Steve Jobs, like did it come out like that of just some guys happened to invent it? And this is the difference between Avaroha and Aroha Panta. Like that's I think what we're talking about. Is it an Aroha science, which would be like a worldly science, an empirical science? It's built up from the ground. Aroha, it comes up Rohini, or is it Avaroha? It just comes down from somebody else. So actually, honestly,
any examples of the two?
Yeah, sure. Physics. Isaac Newton watching an apple fall and then figuring out the laws of science based on that. That's Aroha, where you build stuff up.
Okay.
So inference is called Anuman, and Anuman is based on Pratyaksha, which is experience.
Okay.
So like Newton sees an apple fall, that's his Pratyaksha, and then he figures out like there must be something in the ground that's pulling it.
Yeah.
That's his Anuman, that's his inference. And then so now he comes to Shabda, where he is able to define something.
Yeah.
He's able to define gravity. Let's call it gravity. So that there you're taking Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. You're building to Shabda from Pratyaksha. From your experience, you're building up to something definable. That's empirical science. Then the divine science is you're starting with Shabda, and you take the Shabda into your Anuman, and then it becomes Pratyaksha. So Shabda means the word, the definitions, the Shruti, the Smriti. You hear the Veda, you hear information. And you contemplate it, you meditate on it, you think about it, you try to figure it out. That's your Anuman. And then you see it. Like if you're practicing tennis or something, and you're watching some good tennis player. I don't know anything about tennis, so I can't tell the difference between the best tennis player and the worst tennis player. But if after I get some education about what tennis is, then my observation can tell the difference. This guy has a good swing, this guy has a bad swing. So sometimes education will actually cause our perception to be different. So that's what divine science does. Divine science starts with information and then revolutionizes our perception. Empirical science starts with perception and then revolutionizes our information. So astrology.
So continue.
Go ahead.
So basically, just to round it off, just to clarify, one begins from experience, which is Aroha, and then it comes towards man giving it some form. All right. And the other one is which comes only from the information, such as from the Vedas, Avroha. So it's coming from above. And then we define it or create it or manifest it into our experience.
Right.
Okay.
That's the ultimate way. The ultimate Avaroha is like the Veda will. But anytime I go to a school, for example, I'm doing Avaroha. Like if I go to first grade and the teacher tells me 1 + 1 = 2, That's an example of divine science functioning in a simple way. The teacher who has some knowledge gives it to me. I think about it. And then all of a sudden, the next time I'm playing with my toys and I have one toy and another toy and I put them together, then I see what two is. And it makes sense to me now because I heard it. I heard about it from my teacher. So that's how the Shabda comes through my intelligence or Anuman, and then it becomes part of my projection, my experience. So it's not just on the grand scale of like the Vedas and everything. It's any kind of educational method of getting knowledge is descending of Aroha. But now the question is on what's called the optica, whether the person is optic or not, optic purusha, if the person is qualified.
Yes.
So if you're so the quest is to find a more and more opta purush, a more and more qualified source of information to teach you. So that will eventually say, well, it would lead back to the Veda, to the sages, to the rishis, to the Veda, through which you can get information about stuff that's not just 1 + 1. I could have learned 1 + 1 = 2 another way. I didn't have to learn it from a teacher. I could have just got one toy here, I got another toy here. Now I got two of them. I could have done that by myself. But there's certain things that you can't do by yourself. Things that are not like taking parts of what I've already experienced and building them into a new thing. Information about what I don't even know how to explain it, but information which is about things which are beyond the perception of the senses has to be gained from a divine source. So astrology, I think, is part of the divine science of the Veda. I mean, actually, it is actually in the Rig Veda. There's parts of astrology. It's not terribly similar to what we do today, but the basic roots of astrology are in the Rig Veda. So I do think it's part of the divine science.